Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where or when you're viewing this session. I'm Sean Crowley, the Senior Director of Demand Generation for Dun & Bradstreet, and will be your host for today's session. Hopefully you all had a chance to hear the keynote address from Nancy Giordano and Michael Bird. Don't worry if you haven't, it's been recorded for your future viewing. But one of the things that really resonated with me was that given what's happened this year, we really all have to start thinking and acting differently. And that's especially true for our sales organization. And that's why I'm really excited to be here with you today to introduce Julie Thomas. Julie Thomas is the president and CEO of ValueSelling Associates, is a noted speaker, author, and consultant. In a career spanning more than 15 years, she credits her mastery of the value selling framework for her own meteoric rise through the ranks of sales, sales management, and corporate leadership positions. Prior to joining ValueSelling Associates, Julie rose through the ranks at Gartner over a 15-year career there. And in a very short amount of time, since January of this year, D&B has been leveraging the value selling framework with great success. So I'm really excited that she's joining here today. I think she's got a great message that's really going to resonate. And so without further ado, I'll pass things over to Julie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. I'm thrilled to be here and was so pleased to be invited by Dun & Bradstreet to join you in today's summit. It's really exciting. And revenue acceleration and the whole theme that Dun & Bradstreet has put together is resonating with virtually every sales leader that I have been speaking with since this whole crazy 2020 broke loose. So I'm happy to be here and share some ideas and some insight with you today. We are going to spend some time talking this morning about your value proposition and really what's the difference between a value proposition and value selling, and talk clearly about what needs to change in our skill sets and our approach to be successful at competing on value. We're also going to talk a little bit about the importance of value in creating urgency and motivating people to change, as well as the role of differentiation in this whole process. Not only do we want to uncover the value for the type of solution that we sell, but we want to uncover the unique value of our solution vis-a-vis whatever competitive alternative our buyers or prospects might be considering. And last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about the sale after the sale. And what I mean by that, it's the fight for capital. Today, especially given the economic forces that are impacting every one of our clients, we have two sales that we have to win. The first is we have to be the best in the category of the solutions that we provide. We have to make sure our customers understand that. But second, we have to uncover enough value that that business purchase can stand alone. In other words, they have to go fight for the capital to not just win, this is the best solution, but to say, is this the best use of our capital today? And that sale is a very different sale, and we'll talk a little bit about those specifics. So we're going to talk about all this in the context of the chaos that we're all operating in. And it's interesting, a little story. I was talking to a good friend of mine earlier this week, and his daughter is actually, has recently joined the FBI, and she's in training at Quantico. And she was talking to her father and said, hey, Dad, the reason they invest so much in training is because in times of crisis, the natural inclination of people is to fall back on their highest level of training. So they give us so much training so that in times of crisis, it's automatic and we can fall back on that foundation. Well, that's a lot of how we partner with our clients. How do we provide those foundations? So when stress is high and the world is crazy and their hair is on fire, they have a strong foundation to fall back on. And I'm going to share with you some of those tactics, techniques, and principles that we've been working with Dun & Bradstreet on, as well as other firms all over the globe that are trying to improve their sales effectiveness. So there's no question that in today's world, we are dealing with a lot of uncertainty. It is turbulent. It is crazy. It is divisive in terms of what we have. It's difficult to know where to turn to get the truth in the world that we're operating today. And what's the impact of that? Well, the impact of that is that business priorities have shifted. Businesses have had to adapt, not just the obvious adaptations that we all went through in mid-March when we all got the email, go home. And at the time, we didn't know that would mean stay home, but we all went home. No matter where you were in the world, you went home at some point in March. And every business had to pivot and adapt to that in a different way. And then it stayed and it got more complex. And then the world said, hold on a second, grab my beer, and everything else impacted our business, from social unrest to the political environment that we're operating in to all this other craziness. And it's impacted the businesses. It's impacted us in the businesses we work on, and it has certainly impacted the businesses that we call on by having them reevaluate every purchase, every priority, and how they're going to move forward in spite of this. And that, for some of us, has created tremendous opportunity. For others, it has been a little bit harder. But we at Value Selling, we're here to help people through that process and understand what they can do differently. So just a real foundation of what is Value Selling Associates. Well, we're a firm that partners with B2B sales organizations to help them improve the individual sales productivity of their reps. How do we do that? We help them by giving them some skills to manage the entire life cycle of their client engagements, from prospecting through retention, account management, upselling, etc. And we bring to them a number of skills, tools, processes to help them do that. And why is that important? Well, it's important because there's some challenges facing every organization out there, which kind of leads into the objectives that Dun & Bradstreet has asked me to talk to you about today. What is a value proposition and how does that change? What's the difference between having a good value proposition and this whole concept of value selling? And then how do I use value to motivate change? I often hear from clients, Julie, one of our challenges is we're perceived as a nice to have solution. And I really want to help my sales people reposition us or reframe the value proposition to be a need to have solution. Well, that's some of the skills that we help our clients with, and I'm going to share with you some ideas on that today. Being different is not the same as being differentiated, and we'll talk a little bit about that process and the uniqueness of that process and our approach in order to position ourselves for the fight to win capital. And this fight to win capital is a different type of sale for most of us, because it is a conversation that often we as the sales professional are not invited to that table to have that conversation. A couple weeks ago, I was working with one of the sales reps on my team, and he was so excited because we had been told we had been awarded a win. We had been involved in a long bid process and gone through what some of you may have gone through in the past, what I affectionately call the beauty contest, where they paraded, it got down to 3 vendors, and they paraded those 3 suppliers through a number of Zoom calls, just like we're on today. And they shared what that would look like. And then they called us and said, good news, you won. And we were great. We were doing our happy dance. We were preparing our statement of work and the agreement that we wanted to send over to be executed when we got the call that said, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is nothing's changed. You've still won in the category and we want to put you forward. The bad news is my boss now needs to go into the boardroom to get the funding for this initiative. And he is fighting for funding for this initiative versus completely unrelated initiatives by other leaders in the organization. And we had to go prepare him to win that fight for capital. And that is truly what's going on in today's world because of the shifting priorities. So let's talk about what a value proposition is. Value is where we all start. And as organizations, whether you're a marketer or a salesperson, we are typically taught what is the value of our organization. And what that is really the promise to the marketplace, to a potential buyer, to a potential industry, to a potential segment that says, here's the promise of the potential impact of our products and services. A value proposition, by definition, is a macro perspective of the potential value you can bring to the organization. But it is different than value selling. It's the starting place. It is not the finish line for the value conversation. What do I mean by that? Well, let's first look at a little more detail of what a couple of examples of value propositions are. And if any of you are on this call that come from any of these companies, it was purely random that I selected these examples. But here's an example of a value proposition: shorten, share, measure. Measurable things that company can talk about in terms of their promise to the marketplace. So this is Bitly, and they talk about their promise to the marketplace, and it's to shorten things, share things, and have some measurable impact. That is very broad. It is not quantified, but it is a directional point of view on the impact that Bitly can have on their business. Great value proposition from that perspective. Here's another example. This is FreshBooks, cloud accounting for small business. And great value proposition for you. This is for you. You don't have to be an accountant to take advantage of the capabilities of my services. So a great value proposition inherent in this or embedded in this is the ease of use, designed for you. We think like a business, make it really easy. Well, again, that value proposition is the starting point of the conversation. Value selling takes it to the next level. So what we want to do when we are selling value is to understand the customer specific value. So how much time can you save? How much can you measure as an impact of a result, and drive the quantification in a customer specific scenario? So we take that very macro promise of the value proposition and we develop a conversational approach to uncover specifically what you at Dun & Bradstreet, or what you in your organization would uncover or tell me the potential value is, you could do it. And the key to this whole value conversation is that when we facilitate the conversation, it makes that value believable and quantifiable. And it's them agreeing that that value is possible, not us telling them that that value is possible. We flip the script, if you will, to have those prospects really uncover and quantify that. So what does that mean? Well, it means a couple of things. There are always a couple of components of value: the business value and the personal value. We believe in the principle that people make emotional buying decisions for logical reasons. Those of you on the line that are marketers know that. We appeal to the emotion first, and then we appeal to the logical justification. If we can get their buy-in at the emotional level, it makes it really easy to get them to help us build the business case to move forward. And we do that through our engagement strategies. One of the key outcomes that companies that come to us for help with, they tell us, Julie, hey, I have got a sales team that is technically unparalleled in their ability to sell whatever they sell. I am technically unparalleled at talking to people about data and analytics. And we can talk to those people that care about data and analytics all day long. The key to uncovering the value of data analytics is to connect that value to a acknowledged business outcome or business metric, and elevating that conversation. There's no value in data and analytics unless it has a positive impact on the business. We're no longer selling solutions for solution's sakes. We're selling them to have a real measurable impact on the business. So the key to value selling is elevating that conversation and having that. And why is that so important? Well, when we ask and we don't tell them, they buy it. They have the buy-in for this. It's a collaborative process. Most people don't want to be sold. Yet they all have ideas of what they can do differently and want to collaborate on making sure they get the right solution. So this whole asking, questioning framework becomes a really powerful component because it helps us understand how we can connect to what's important to them. One of the interesting things that I talk to a lot of sales organizations about is they say, oh, Julie, we do a ton of discovery. We do lots of discovery. We ask a lot of questions. And then we start to map those questions. Okay, what types of questions are you asking? I think it's a fallacy that discovery has a beginning and an end. I think it's a fallacy that we only ask questions in the upfront initial parts of our sales cycle, or maybe the first call or the first couple of calls, because discovery happens throughout the entire sales engagement. Things change. Points of view is altered based on what people might learn in the organization. So this whole asking framework ends up extending beyond just discovery to build the collaborative buy-in that we're trying to work towards. So what are we trying to do? Well, we're trying to understand the why behind the potential buy, and that is the value. Value answers the questions for our prospects. Is it worth it? And that's why it becomes such a customer-specific conversation. You may answer the question differently on is it worth it than I might, even though we buy the same thing. Let me tell you, that happens all the time between my husband and I. We may come to the same conclusion on what's the best, whatever it is, let's call it a car, that we're going to buy for our family. But the reasons that we justify that decision are almost always very different. So that value conversation is so powerful because it allows you to understand the why behind the buy. And in today's world, almost always there's multiple people involved in that decision from multiple points of view, multiple perspectives. So we want to be able to have that. What does that give us? Context. We understand how this is going to impact them, and we can use that to create urgency. No matter what you sell and your sales teams are engaging your prospects on, you're likely selling change. And value becomes that energy that fuels the change. It's how we activate a sales cycle or a buying process and facilitate the outcome to what we want. Values that energy, and we need to really make sure we're deliberate in uncovering that and driving that quantification. So let's dive into the whole concept of differentiation, because one of the things that I said, not only do we want to be differentiated, but we want to build on that value proposition and that value selling questioning process to uncover the unique value that only we can accrue to our clients. When we become the superior or the best alternative for them to choose, it's because there's something that we do that they don't believe they can get from another alternative. And that alternative may be a head-to-head competitor. It may be status quo, or I'm going to do nothing. Or it may be, hey, can I build this myself? Do I need to partner with somebody, or can I figure out how to do it ourselves? So our differentiation has to be able to address a process of any or all of those alternatives that our buyers might be looking at or our prospects might be considering. So one of the things that we believe here at Value Selling Associates is being different is not the same as being differentiated. Being different is important, don't get me wrong, and marketing and our product teams are really good at telling us the tally of all the things that we can do differently than those competitive alternatives. But being differentiated is figuring out which one of those or which ones of those matter to that client. And that's, again, the process that we help people go through when they're trying to uncover their differentiation. So what does that mean? Well, being differentiated means I uncover what's important to you and connect to that. I understand what about my solution can solve a problem that you might have. And you might have a different problem than somebody else that might care about a different capabilities. And we also try to expand those capabilities, if you will, from more than just functionality. There are certainly some things that we do, and in the software world and the SaaS-based world, it's functionality that we may bring to the table, but we often have to differentiate ourselves on more than just functionality. So we start to think about different ways that we can differentiate ourselves. Capabilities, absolutely part of the game to this. However, capabilities change all the time. I could have the best capability, and 90 days later, a competitor comes out with a release and they leapfrog me, and then I leapfrog them. So I often have to expand beyond capabilities. Terms and conditions could be a way that we differentiate. I'm often asked, well, what do you mean by that, Julie? Well, maybe it's favorable payment terms. Maybe it's returns, depending on the type of products that you have. We can see it today. Amazon Prime differentiates on free shipping. So depending on what you sell, terms and conditions could be the deal breaker or enough to differentiate you in certain areas. Customer experience today, that is one of the hot buttons for differentiation. We have all been Amazoned and expect that our B2B buying experience is as frictionless as our consumer buying processes. So we are expecting frictionless, easy to engage, easy to work with companies, easy customer service as part of that customer experience. And if we don't get it, that could be enough for us to look elsewhere. And then brands. We also look at our brands. Dun & Bradstreet is a great example. No one questions their position in the marketplace as a market leader in terms of their ability to generate data. They've been at it for a long time. They are a unrisky alternative for us to partner with. And in every market segment, there's those market leaders, that brand, and those often represent reduced risk in making that decision. So understanding what is important to those individuals are the key to how we actually differentiate that. And again, it's the skill set to really work through that in a conversational way, in really understanding what is every buyer's most important thing. How do I understand that to contextually best position and put my best foot forward and uncover the value of that? And we're doing this all in a world where the buyer is trying to force commoditization, right? What's an RFP? It's a way to force commoditization. Just tell me what I want to know about what you have so I can try to create parity and force you to compete on price. In a commoditized market, price is the deal breaker. In a value-added market, we differentiate. So price is not the deal decision maker. It still has to be fair. We have to be in there. But we know that people will pay a premium if they think they will get a premium. And that's where value selling fits in providing that framework and that skill set for your reps to understand how they can do that. So the last piece that we're going to talk about, and today I think this is more important for many of us, given where we are in our economic situation. There's no question that our economies, wherever you are in the world joining this session, have been impacted as a result of the pandemic. What started as a health crisis has evolved to an economic crisis in many areas, from small business to certain industries, whether it's travel and tourism, the airline industry, what have you. We can all think of the examples of industries that have been hard hit. As a result, every business on the planet, I believe, has had to reassess where they're spending capital. They have tightened the belt. They have become much more risk averse in terms of where they are investing in their business moving forward. Why? There's too much uncertainty. So they have to make the right bets with that capital, because there's no one today, as best I can tell, that really has a good understanding of when things will go back to where we were on March 1st as opposed to where we are today. So that means we have two sales. We have to win in our category, which means we have to be differentiated and uncover value of that. Then we have to have enough value that stands up in the business boardroom to justify that decision when it's compared to non-competing projects fighting for capital. So that value becomes even more important in today's world because it is the foundation for every purchase. So what do we know about value? Well, value is grounded in the business objectives of your organization. So value typically has to do with revenue, cost, cash, compliance, or profit. And any one of those could, or any combination of those could be how you build the case. Remember, when I talk about value, it's about knowing how your prospect answers the question, is it worth it? Do I have $1 million headache and I'm looking at a $100,000 aspirin? It's a pretty good deal. But finally, I have a $50,000 headache and the sales rep has no idea how big that headache is and goes in and proposes a $100,000 aspirin. That sales rep is automatically at a disadvantage in how they could build that. They are automatically too expensive, and that's key. Value is measurable. Value is believable. That means we don't tell them, they tell us, because people don't argue with their own data. And it all becomes grounded in that business metric and how it can be measured. There are always intangible aspects to value, but when the budgets are tight and companies are risk averse, they're looking for those hard dollar tangible value metrics that they can stand up and use in those sales conversations and use in those justifications. And now we can look at all of the ways that we can capture some of the data that helps us uncover what that customer specific value might be. So if you think of all of the data that we have that helps us accelerate these conversations, be credible, and predict where it might be so we can engage more effectively and amplify some of those messages, it's all to get us to the point that we can talk with individuals and understand their point of view on this whole front. So we've talked about the value journey, what it is, how we do it, the difference between a value proposition and value selling. We've also talked about how in this world, the sales behaviors have to change. We cannot tell, we have to ask. We have to change the skill sets to really help them engage in this world, be credible, establish that baseline conversations. And one thing I'll share with you that I know, and it is backed up by data, high-performing sales teams go to market with consistent approaches. And that's both the behaviors, the skills, the tools, and the technologies that they leverage. And building that around best practices allows you to become a high-performing sales team. And that business conversation still becomes the competitive differentiator for your teams. Yes, you need to know the technology you sell. Yes, you need to be a product expert. But more important, because we can bring those people in if we need to, is the account manager, the sales rep, having the ability to have a business conversation about the real impact a partnership with you will bring to the table. So that is what we've talked about today. I am going to ask Sean to come back in and share with us where we're going and also give us an opportunity to answer a few questions that you might have.
Great. Thanks very much, Julie. I think that's incredibly relevant today. And certainly, as you talked about what we're dealing with from a societal, from a business level and a personal level with this whole pandemic has really transformed how we look at the marketplace and ourselves within that context. So before we get into the questions, I do want to make a plug for what's next within this track for the sales leaders track here at the Revenue Acceleration Summit. So just following this, we're going to take a short break from the sessions, and we're going to come back with Peter Larkin, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at True Influence. And his session is about 3 winning sales plays for igniting growth. And he's going to be looking at how AI and data can help organizations build a 360-degree view. I think that's incredibly relevant for some of the aspects that Julie was just talking about in terms of how do you build value, and differentiation comes by understanding who you're going after, and then how does your solutions align to those organizations. Also, building a stronger data foundation to win more sales. That's about an everyday practice, I think. And Julie just talked about that. What you do every day matters, and having a consistent approach to that matters. And then obviously transforming sales into consultative sellers. So that really goes back to the value that Julie was talking about in terms of creating differentiated value. Starts with understanding what your client really needs and what value they're looking for in the solutions to their problems. And then just following that, Max Altschuler, who's the VP of Marketing for Outreach.io, is going to be talking about how Outreach uses data and insights to accelerate revenue and achieve market leadership. So I'd say he's going to get into details about aligning sales, campaigns, and programs for success. And Julie talked about, the emotional and the logical approach to selling. And I think it's really that combination of aligning sales, marketing, and product together around a common theme, around a common purpose, and differentiated value that really can help break through the noise that's out there today. He'll also dive into getting started with account-based sales and building a strong customer data foundation. We'll also be wrapping up there with some closing comments from Michael Bird. I did want to get into some questions, so if you want to, we can move here. So Julie, what do you see as the biggest challenges that organizations face in making the shift from standard value proposition selling to a truly differentiated value conversation?
Well, the interesting thing, Sean, here is that ends up being a skill set issue for their teams and for the individuals on their teams. In giving them the skills that they can engage and ask more questions and purposeful questions, as opposed to just pitching and explaining and educating on what that potential value proposition might be. And there's a lot of people that I believe confuse value proposition with value selling. Well, I've certified my reps on their pitch. I've certified them on the messaging, and they're all very good communicators from that perspective. And they just want to tell and profess what those value propositions are. And helping the sales reps with the skill set that they are comfortable at letting go of controlling the conversation by dominating the conversation, and controlling the conversation by getting information and pulling that out of their prospects is really the skill set that's important here. And it's not just, do you know how to ask good questions? Do you know how to ask the right questions at the right time to the right people to get you what you need to create the opportunity that you can win?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So another one is, all great information here, makes a lot of sense. Where do you think is the best place for a company to start down this path? Or in essence, where's the low-hanging fruit?
Where's the low-hanging fruit? Well, I think that's probably a little bit different for every company, but I think you've got to start diagnosing what those barriers are. And is the barrier on the insight side of things? Like, do we know who we're targeting, who those people are, what they care about, so that we can start to tailor campaigns to get in front of them and engage them? Or is it a skill set? So we often we do a diagnostic with a lot of our clients. It starts with, let's look at what you have, look at where those gaps are and where we can improve and find that low-hanging fruit. Oftentimes it's the skill set. Sometimes it's even the management process in terms of how we're looking at that and setting expectations of what they do. And oftentimes it's part of the technology stack and making sure that we've got alignment and integration with what they need with where they work. And I think that's where we've seen a lot of, quantum leaps in productivity come from the alignment of all these different technology pieces into where they work. So nobody had to go to 10 different places to get the answer to the question they're looking for. But it's really identifying, looking inward and doing a good diagnosis of what the root cause or barriers are that you have before you get prescriptive.
Gotcha. That makes complete sense. Okay, so this is a data and analytics summit here, and turning that into revenue acceleration. So I have to ask one data question here. So how have you seen the role of data and analytics in the sales process specifically changed in the past year or so? And then do you see this trend continuing? Has it accelerated a quantum shift into leveraging data and analytics as a cornerstone to the sales process?
I think so. I think so. So I think if I were to break that down, I see it from 2 points of view. So, and the point of view is sales leadership and management, and then the other side is sales reps. So what has this done for sales reps? Well, absolutely, it provides to time savings. It gives them insight so they can be more relevant whenever they have those conversations. And I think the work that you and have been able to do to get that data into a consumable format where they're doing the work is incredibly powerful. And integration has been the name of the game for the last couple of years, right? How do we get everything into that point of work where people are doing that work? When the sales rep has it, they can start to make better decisions on where they focus their time and where those opportunities might make more sense. So there's huge time savings, and I think a real benefit to the reps from that perspective. Now, from a management perspective, it allows them to start to identify where there might be inefficiencies in their processes, where there might be gaps that they can start to see, and take it from, this is my gut reaction of where we're losing things, to really being able to understand where that is. Data and analytics and technology in general helps us amplify those messages, highlight those messages so we can make better decisions, better allocate resources, and figure out how to fix things in a much faster, more streamlined way.
Great. I totally agree. Thanks, Julie. We are running out of time, so I do want to encourage, if you are asking questions, please continue to ask questions through there. We will come back and we'll get you the answers to the questions that you've asked, and we'll follow up with you on that. But I did want to thank you, Julie, for joining us here today. That was a great presentation, and encourage everyone to attend the following sessions. And those that you can't attend today, please come back and view the recorded sessions after the event. Thank you very much, and Julie, have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone.